I'd say stay weary of the Whispering Woods, especially if you don't want to sleep on finding this figure. Here's your look at the brand new Mattel He-Man and Master Universe cartoon collection, Shadow Weaver, Evil Mistress of Dark Magic. It's an exciting time to be a Master Universe fan. For longtime fans and for a new generation of kids who love the action and adventure, it's time to experience the thrilling action and adventure of He-Man, Skeletor, The Secrets of Castle Grayskull, and much more. The figures in this collection stand 5.5 inches tall and have 16 movable joints, so they're highly posable for imaginative and action-oriented fun. While I'm convinced that He-Man's had eyes for Castaspella, I have certainly had eyes for the cartoon collection Shadow Weaver, and finally having her in hand. Before we look at the figure and all the accessories that she has, we're going to start things first by taking the tape measure, and we'll see how tall the figure stands. And then, of course, we'll also bring in a good heaping helping of the Horde with other cartoon collection figures that we've already gotten thus far. Thus far, though, let's take the tape measure. Shadow Weaver is going to stand at 5 inches in height, or the figure is going to work out to be 13 centimeters tall. Mattel certainly hasn't helped the rebels. Most of the new cartoon collection figures, or at least from She-Ra, have in fact all been the Horde. Bringing as the examples here, the leader of the Horde, there's what she looks like with Hordak. Bringing then in Grizzlor off to the other side. Of course, we got Mantenna. Then we have Leech. Then we've got ourselves, of course, Catra. And, of course, if we are going to be looking at the cartoon collection Shadow Weaver, while we don't have yet an Origins release of her, we have the next best thing. Here's what the figure looks like with the new Eternia release of her. Castaspella. You can't make that stuff up. Well, I guess they would have in order for that character to exist in the cartoon. Let's look, though, at the accessories that come included with Shadow Weaver. Castaspella. The figure first does come included with an instruction sheet. Now, the sheet only really is there just to tell you that you can detach and divorce the arms from the torso, remove the lower half like you're separating the tail of a lobster, and then, of course, you can also take off her head. Now, taking off her head does also mean that you can also remove her cape, as the figure does have a cape on the back of her body. Let's discard this quickly. One thing I won't be discarding so quickly is the mini-comic. The mini-comic, though, as you've probably already seen the reviews of it, happens, though, to be the exact same one that came with Whiplash. When we look at Bo's on his way. Bo will also have the exact same comic. Luckily, though, at least that both of them are in pretty good condition. If one was in bad shape, at least I could also turf that and keep the better one. Usually, though, I'll kind of keep as many of these as I have. I don't really feel the need to get rid of everything, just because, again, like if something happens to one of the mini-comics, usually at least you have 2 or 3 extra ones. The comic itself, obviously we're not just going to look at the front cover. The cover, though, also is the starting of all the way they've drawn the inside of the comic. So each of the individual panels, again, like some of the art is either good or bad. It never really meets in the middle. She-Ra looks okay down below here. Catra, not so much. One thing I really do like, and being that I don't think he ever appeared in the episodes looking like this, is a Horde-armored Skeletor. Yes, please. Mattel, if you can make that happen, I know it's probably not going to be a cartoon collection figure, but at the very least, if you could make a pink-clad armor Horde version of Skeletor, I would grab that right away. Just grab it like pulling an apple from a tree. And just having the juices running down my chin. What are we talking about here? We're talking about Horde Skeletor. Here's another look at him, by the way. One thing that's kind of cool, too, is that he also has the Horde face on his Havoc staff. How cool is that? So let's move that off to the side. Not moving it off to the side with the plans to discard these in recycling bins, but just to kind of move it out of the way. One thing, though, the figure does also come included with is not only just her scepter, but she also comes with the Eldritch book. The Eldritch book of spells comes actually from the episode of the same name, the Eldritch Mist. I'm having a hard time getting that all out. The book itself does look very much like it does in the episode. I like the way that they've actually not even just painted this in the yellow, but the fact that this is actually sculpted in the plastic itself. I'm sure, though, they're probably not going to reuse this book. If you don't want to necessarily, though, use it with Shadow Weaver, hey, why not? You could also bring yourself in the cartoon collection. Now I'm drawing just a blank. Orko. Thank you. Orko. And you could technically even really put the book in his hand as well. It's not the easiest thing to do. You sort of have to have the book resting with the thumb on top of it. And that seems the best way to have them, either one of them for that matter, holding the Eldritch book. Eldritch book. Eldritch book. Eldritch book. The book, by the way, can also go into her hands, but pretty much the same rule of thumb works as well. You kind of have to have it resting on her fingers, and the thumb does most of the job of kind of holding it in place. The problem, though, with Shadow Weaver is that she has much smaller hands. So even just to have her holding the book, she needs to cast a spell of luck, because you're not going to have much luck really having her holding the book properly. This other hand, I suppose you can also put the book in that hand as well. But again, like, it's just sort of wedging it in there, walking away, and hope that nobody sneezes. Stop that, stop that. Let's, though, remove the book. You can also, of course, take the scepter. I will say, though, the scepter is large. Did it really need to be the size that it is? I mean, it looks like, first of all, a giant microphone. Like maybe she's, doing karaoke late at night in the Fright Zone. Frightful Frights with your host, Shadow Weaver. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. Make sure you try the meatloaf. But the actual scepter, other than being really large, at least it does have some nice black painted in there as well, even though, like, most of the majority of it is just cast here in gray plastic. Mic drop. Let's just move that off to the side. I'll say one thing, though, right away about Shadow Weaver, is I feel like the coloring is off. Not that I really would want to make the comparisons that the two Shadow Weavers should be the same color, but I think somewhere, though, met in the middle is the proper color of the cartoon collection. She really isn't as bright pink as really what's being depicted here. In fact, like, the figure really, from the character standpoint, should be more, I think, like a darker reddish coloring of this. I feel it's way too bright. Now, the thing about Shadow Weaver, mentioned already, is that if you don't like the look of the cape being just a really big, long sheet of plastic, what you can do is you can detach her head, and you take the cape off altogether. Now, it makes, even for the fact, it draws more attention to the fact that the figure is much small. I mean, she's a really tiny character. I don't know really why you would ever really want to take the cape off, but it's there as an option if you want. Speaking of available there options, now, Shadow Weaver, one thing about her is she doesn't have feet. She's completely flat, or as flat as she could really be for the fact that she's a floating character. She stands fine. I mean, it's not the case that she does have any difficult time to stand. But if you are familiar, though, with this Shadow Weaver, she did actually come included with a display stand. This display stand did give her some additional poseability. If this Shadow Weaver would be one that you'd like to have displayed in a similar way, what you can also do, too, is you can take yourself Orko, and you can detach the little display stand that came included with him. And if you look on actually the bottom of Shadow Weaver, there's a hole. Hello! There's a hole right there. You can actually take the display stand for Orko and just plug it onto the bottom like that. And hey, now you got yourself a floating Shadow Weaver. I do appreciate that they used a universally sized hole. So if you wanted to use Orko's display stand, now granted it means that Orko doesn't have himself a stand, but I mean, all the more reason to get yourself a second one of these. Now at least you can use the stand for Shadow Weaver. And of course, when it comes to displaying the two, they're a little bit more like one another. Let's move her out of the way, though. Other than really the coloring kind of being off on the figure, I do think like the sculpting is really good on her. She has really a raspy voice in the actual episodes that she appears in. She looks very much like this, just other than the fact that she really isn't as bright of a neon pink as what we're getting here. Nice detail done, of course, down below. Hort has to be represented everywhere. She just happens to have it down below here on her belt. Of course, she's got the long sleeves. Now, there's no poseability at all for these, but luckily, at least, she does have some mobility in her hands. Again, like a nice looking figure. She just is a little on the smaller side. If we were just to compare her with like Catra, I guess size-wise, she's not all that bad, but she seems small, if that makes any sense at all. Hopefully what will make some sense, we're going to run through the figure's poseability. And of course, she does have the little point on the tops of her, a little cloak hoodie. For the figure's articulation, Shadow Weaver does have a ball joint. This allows the figure to do the following. The head can move up and down, or all the way around. Only just a little bit up and down. A lot of it really is just the fact that this cape is getting in the way. If you bring the cape down just a little bit, she gets a little bit more clearance. But that's just you, of course, having to hold it down. Most of the time, the cape rides up, and it really does prevent a lot of mobility. So just kind of hold it down a bit, and then you can angle the head, and then slowly back out of the room. The figure does have a bit of a head rocker back and forth too. Of course, she only just has a straight swivel. You're not going to get much of anything really with Master Universe figures. Shadow Weaver does have arm articulation. I did notice, though, the arm is really tight when it comes to rotating it all the way around. It's almost like it's telling me, don't do it, and yet I did it anyways. There's also a hinge that allows the arm to go out at 90 degrees, or a T pose if you prefer. The figure does also have a bend in the elbow. Now, the elbow bend does also serve as two purposes. One to do this, one to do this as well. As the arms do, of course, rotate back and forth. She does have hand swivelage, if it's a little harder to get your hands on the hands, but you can't actually move them back and forth. And that's it. Normally, I would continue on my merry little way, walking my way down the legs, and you'd be able to do other stuff. But you can't really do any other stuff with Shadow Weaver. For the lower end of the articulation, this is all she's going to be able to do. All in all, though, it's a nice looking figure. Like, I always really like the look of Shadow Weaver. She's one of those certainly characters where I think she's using the same voice as Catra. So it's just sort of like, again, the same voice actors, just sort of changing out their tones and adding raspier notes to certain characters over others. Shadow Weaver does look, again, a really neat looking design. Again, if you really like the look of Shadow Weaver, whether we have already gotten ourselves, of course, the new Eternia release of her, I think there may be plans. I'm sure we are probably going to be getting a Shadow Weaver as part of the She-Ra Master Universe Origins line. Of course, when it comes to scaling, bringing back in the likes of Catra, I could have probably also brought in Evil Lyn, Teela, or even She-Ra, but just the fact I did want to kind of stick at least with the baddies. She does, at least size-wise, even though she does look small, she's at least the same size somewhat as Catra. Let's just kind of move her out of the way. Let's bring back in here some of the other, again, Horde members. There's Antenna, Leech, there's Hordak, and over here, Grizzlor. The only other thing, again, I would mention is when it comes to her accessories, yeah, she does have the mic drop, which just right over here. Hey, everybody, thanks for coming out. And, of course, she does also have the book. The Book of Eldritch is still, again, a hard thing to say, an even harder thing for her to hold. She doesn't really have the proper gripping hands, or really for that matter, the hand really isn't designed to hold the book all that well. Still, though, I mean, you can try your best. I did have her holding the book at the beginning of this review. Dang it, though, I am going to also make sure that she's holding the book when we wrap up the review. But again, you can see, like, she barely holds on to it. At least, though, it's an accessory that makes an appearance in the episode in the same way that Shadow Weaver makes an appearance in the episode. The one other thing I really wish, though, that could have made the appearance with this figure release is also a display stand. Sure, it's fine and good that you can use the one that comes included with Orko, but you take Orko's, then what poor Orko's going to have for when it comes to levitation? I think that she should have had that as an accessory. Certainly, though, it was the case when we got the new Eternia release of her. I see Weaver has used the spell of thievery and stolen the display stand from poor Orko. Not Sigourney Weaver, by the way. This is her evil sister. They never really speak. They come together from time to time for family functions. Half the time, though, they don't even talk. One thing, though, about Shadow Weaver is that at least they did use a hole, and they put it at the top of her cloak. So while, unfortunately, though, the figure doesn't have, I guess, enough of the budget to be dedicated to a display stand on her own, she can at least steal the one from Orko. Orko right now is standing in the corner, wondering when his display stand's going to come back. Don't worry, big buddy. The display stand's going to be coming back right to you after this review is over. Shadow Weaver, of course, from the accessory standpoint, does have the Scepter and the Eldritch book. Boy, I had a hard time saying that in the review. Eldritch book from the Eldritch Mist. One of the better episodes of She-Ra. Of course, they kind of make a spell mist around the Whispering Woods, and then He-Man and She-Ra have to go and basically get the book back in order to cancel out the spell. Of course, through that, he also is hanging out with Castaspella. Castaspella. Yeah, again, you can't make that stuff up. What do you guys, though, think of Cartoon Collection Shadow Weaver? Again, not to be confused with Sigourney. Is this a figure that you guys could see picking up, or is it just a total pass? If you certainly would like to summon the summons or cast the spell of subscribe, it's actually not that hard spell to cast at all. You basically just have to look at the bottom of the screen. It's right there. And right next to there is also as well the bell. Turning on the bell will be, of course, the spell to summon and cast at least the spell to make sure that YouTube is aware that this channel exists. I hope that you guys are going to be coming back to this channel because, while unfortunately, though, not much more can be said for Cartoon Collection. I don't think we're going to be looking at any more figures for the rest of this week, but there will still be more reviews coming your way. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.